live.
Thank you. Afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending my virtual Executive Lead Children's Services Decision Day. This Decision Day will be webcast on YouTube via the County Council website. The first item is deputations, that we have none. The next item is key decisions, and the first item is Children's Services Procurement, Approval to Spend. And Laura, I believe you are.
I can't actually see that Laura's here. I mean, I can confirm, Councillor Chad, that there are no changes since your briefing. This is a regular report that seeks approval to spend against contracts. It's within existing budgets and something that we need to do in terms of our scheme of delegation as a local authority.
Thank you, Suzanne. We went over this, as you said, thoroughly in the briefing. Does anyone have any questions or comments that they would like to make on this one? No? Okay, so if I go to the recommendations, which are on page 3. Give me a second. Okay, so the first recommendation is, it is recommended that the Executive Lead Member for Children's Services gives the approval to spend the overnight respite framework to the value of 5 million. The second recommendation is that it's recommended that the Executive Lead Member for Children's Services gives approval to spend for the Independent Fostering Agency framework to the value of 84 million. And it is recommended that the Executive Lead Member of Children's Services gives the approval for the spend for Adult and Community Learning framework with a value of 5,200,000. I'm happy to approve all 3 of those recommendations. Thank you, Suzanne, for that one. And could you pass my thanks on to Laura as well, please? The next item on the agenda is the Children's Services Capital Programme update, and that's Peter Colnut to present.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. I confirm equally no substantive changes since your briefing. The report sets out the updated Children's Capital Programme for 2021-22, and the recommendations are set out at 1 onwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I asked all mine in the briefing. Okay. So we go to page 17 for the recommendations, and the first one is that the revised capital programme cash limit of 64,380,000 from 2021-22 be approved. Second recommendation is that the revised 2021-22 capital programme as set out in Appendix 1 be approved along with the amendments for the 21-22 capital programme. Recommendation 3 is that the following variations of the 21-22 capital programme be approved. And these are, it's recommended that the approval be given to consult on the expansion of Henry Tyndale School, and that approval is given to allocate 0.45 million of resources for the 2022 capital programme to create a new SLD provision at Park Children's Centre, Aldershot. And then also under that recommendation 3, there's that the approval be given for the allocated resource of 0.49 million from the 2022 capital programme for the expansion of Holywater, and that the third aspect of recommendation 3 is that the approval be given to consult with the expansion on Markway School, and that approval be given to allocate resources of just over 1.6 million from the 2021-22 capital programme for the expansion of Markway School. Recommendation 4 is that the recommendation that it be a recommendation to the Cabinet the Uncommitted funding of just over 15 million is set out in Appendix 2, be carried forward for the 2021 to the 21-22 capital programme. And recommendation 5 is that it's recommended that approval be given to the Director of Children's Services to determine those sites that require modular buildings for the 2021-22 academic year, and that the sites listed in Appendix 3 be noted. And finally, recommendation 6 is that the projects approved under delegated powers by the Director of Children's Services in Appendix 4 are noted. I'm happy to approve all those recommendations.
Thank you, Chair.
And thank you, Peter, for that report. Next item is the COVID local support grants for June to September, and that's Suzanne to present.
Thank you, Chair. With your permission, I'll just give a brief overview because this has been an urgent decision as a result of this funding only being announced on the 20th of June, with a requirement to distribute and spend the funding by the 30th of September, which has meant that the reports weren't published in advance, as is normally the case. So this is the fourth tranche of funding that has come through the Department for Work and Pensions, previously known as the COVID Winter Grant, and in the last round and this current round known as the COVID Local Support Grant. The aim of the funding is to support vulnerable households with food and fuel costs and to provide that support in kind of direct financial terms. There are two grant criteria. The first is that up to or at least 80% of the funding must be used to support families with children, and no more than 20% of the funding can be used for other types of household. And similarly, at least 80% of the funding must be used for food and fuel support, and no more than 20% on other forms of support. We've learnt a lot from the last three rounds of funding, and we have based our recommendations on that learning. The recommendations are set out in paragraphs 3 to 9 and put in place a range of different forms of support through free school meal vouchers for a wider cohort of vulnerable children, including care leavers, those in receipt of early years pupil premium, older young people who were previously eligible for free school meals, as well as setting up a community grant pot and putting in place fuel support through citizens' advice. So most of these mechanisms, or all of these mechanisms, have been tried and tested in previous rounds. We know the impact that they will have. We also know that they've been well accessed and well utilised by various families. You'll note that the free school meal voucher values differ between those school-aged children and those non-school-aged. There is insufficient funding to provide £15 per child per week for every week of the school holidays, as we have previously done. And so for that reason, we looked at how we could distribute the funding to best effect. If we look at free school meal, school-aged children in particular, there are a number of other forms of support that are now available, not least the Holiday Activities and Food Scheme, which is providing 53,000 places for free school meal eligible children over the summer holidays, and that includes access to activities but also to a meal, and in the majority of cases that is a hot meal. We've also used previous rounds of this funding to put in place community provision and community pantries, and we now have 15 community pantries up and running across the county, and a further 3 to come on stream fairly soon, and those provide a sustainable and longer term means for families to access subsidised food. And so for those reasons and the others set out in paragraph 17 of the report, I'm recommending that we have a reduced free school meal voucher value for school-aged children to reflect the fact that those other forms of financial and food support are available. It's also worth mentioning that in the last round of funding, we had a community grant pot available of £100,000, I believe it was, and over 10,000 families benefited from the grants we awarded through that funding. And so those, that's another form of support that those families can access in addition to the meal voucher funding. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a summary. As I've said, the recommendations are set out in paragraphs 3 to 9. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. And it's nice to be able to distribute finances like this, at this time, it's a real blessing to families. It really is. And thank you for all your hard work and your team's hard work in getting this done as quickly as you have done. It's been amazing. Councillor Porter, you've got a question you'd like to ask.
Yes, although I think Suzanne must have seen it in the chat and she addressed it. I'm sure she did do, which was about the £60 value. I presume that this will be one of the monitoring outcomes that we'll be looking at from this one. I mean, who knows whether this is going to carry on year or however it's going to happen. And I'm really pleased to see the refinements from the Easter have been learnt for the summer process. But it's just about making sure that those families are actually accessing things like the pantries. Having been to the one in Winchester, it's well used, but it's whether it's well used by those same people that will be receiving their vouchers. So I'd be really interested to see the learning from this at the end of the summer, because I am concerned about the £60.
I can confirm that we do. Obviously, we monitor the uptake of the vouchers, but we also monitor the usage of the pantries. So that's certainly something we can report back on in due course.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Councillor Porter. Does anyone else have a question or comment on this item? No. Cool. Councillor Chastain.
Yeah, I've just another thought. Considering these vouchers are all distributed via the schools, what about children that are either excluded from school or if they are homeschooled? Are they picked up?
Children who are educated other than at school, we do provide funding for those children. When children are electively home educated, parents take on the responsibility for all the schooling and the meals, and so we don't pass funding on to electively home educated families. Even
if they're on lower incomes and things?
We haven't done historically, no.
Okay.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments that they would like to make? Jackie, do I need to read each of these out, or can I take them?
I've actually just dropped you a message. You might not have seen it. You can just say you agree recommendations 3 to 9 as set out in the report if you're minded to agree them.
Thank you. Okay, like I said, these are. It's so nice to be able to distribute, this funding, and is so appreciated by our families across Hampshire. And I know that Suzanne will come back and report the outcomes of this tranche of funding and how it's been used and what learning we can take from that. So if I go to page 33 to the recommendations, and it's recommendation 3 all the way down to recommendation 9, and I'm happy to approve each one of those. And thank you again, Suzanne, for you and your team's fantastic work on this.
Thank you, Chair.
I know how busy you have been doing this. That brings us on to our non-key decisions, and our first one is agenda item 4, which is the determination of the post-16 transport policy statement 2021, and that's Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the previous routine, this report is as it was presented for your briefing, and it's the County Council's 2021 post-16 transport policy statement. It's an annual process to put in place some provision to support students attending post-16 education, and the recommendation is presented for you in paragraph 2.
Thank you, Martin. I have no further questions than I did in the briefing. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to comment or add to this one? No? Okay, so It's recommendation in paragraph 2, and I am happy to approve the attached 2021 post-16 transport policy statement. Thank you for that, Martin.
Okay.
And you're up next for item 5, which is the update on the school term and holiday dates.
That's right. Yeah, that was originally in the agenda pack, and then we had to update it. My apologies for there being an error. I have to share with you, Councillor Chad, that a former colleague, Gordon Shin, who reads these things when they're published, identified that there was an errand 2021 when we meant 2022, and also the shading in the calendar in the appendix hadn't faithfully recorded across. So thanks to Gordon just for pointing out that error in what's in the agenda pack, but we've got the updated paper. This is an additional day needing to be added to the 2021-22 school year because of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee and the fact that there's an additional bank holiday that teachers and school students wouldn't be able to take advantage of because it was in a holiday. The date for that is in a week that was already designated for holiday. So our recommendation is that you approve the updated school term and holiday dates in Appendix 2, and following a consultation with schools, they preferred, as you can see in the table in paragraph 7, they preferred the option of going for the extra day in July. And just so that we discussed this in briefing, we just wanted to be certain that we were looking across both primary schools and secondary schools to get a sense of whether or not the two phases agreed on the proposed date, and as you can see in the table, they did, which leads to the recommendation.
Thank you, Martin. I'm so glad that they agreed with a date. Does anyone have any questions or comments about this item at all?
Just a tease.
No. Okay, so we'll go straight to the recommendation, which is paragraph 2, and I'm happy to approve the updated school term and holiday date as set out in Appendix 2 for the school year 21-2022. And I'm sure the children and the teachers will all love their extra day off. I know my children will certainly be looking for it. Thank you. So next on the agenda is, and the last item is appointments to outside bodies, and this is Jackie to present.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a short report seeking appointments to a number of outside bodies as shown in the table in the report. So if I just go through each one and say the proposed appointments, and then if you're happy with them. So the first one, we have Andrews Endowed School, and proposed appointment is Councillor Andrew Joy. Ashford Hill Educational Trust, and proposed appointment Councillor Derek Mellor. Blake's Educational Charity, and the proposed appointment Councillor Hugh Lumby. Bramshot Educational Trust, and we've got Councillor Debbie Curnow-Ford as the proposed appointment. It's Christie's or Christ's Hospital School Foundation, Winchester, and Councillor Jan Warwick as the proposed appointment. East Boulder Educational Charity, and Councillor Keith Manns as the proposed appointment. Eggers Grammar School, Councillor Andrew Joy, Councillor Mark Kent G as to proposed. Farringdon and Newton Valence Playground Charity, Councillor Kent G. Genesis Youth Centre Executive Committee, proposed appointment Councillor Michael Ford. Hampshire Admission Forum, 2 representatives. We have Councillor Prad Baines, Councillor Sarah Pankhurst as proposed appointments. Hampshire Foundation for Young Musicians, Councillor Fran Carpenter. Hampshire Scouts Board of Trustees, this is a new outside body, and Councillor Adam Jackman as the proposed appointment. Henville Educational Foundation, and Councillor Keith House. John Hanson School Awards Foundation, that's 3 trustees, so Councillor Kirsty North, Councillor Tom Thacker and Councillor Christopher Donnelly as the proposed appointments. King Edward VI's School Governing Body and Councillor Keith Manns. Mary Touche Charity, Councillor Hugh Lumby as the proposed appointment. Miss Gales Educational Foundation, Councillor Phil North. Perrins Educational Foundation, Councillor Jackie Porter. Stratfield Say Educational Foundation, Councillor Ridian Vaughan as proposed appointment. Swanmore Educational Charity, Councillor Hugh Lumby. Totton College Nacro Education Forum, Councillor Neville Mim. Upton Gray Educational Trust, Councillor Juliet Henderson as proposed. Weald Education Trust, Councillor Kemp G. This used to be 2 trustees, but we've reduced this down to 1 trustee after speaking to Councillor Porter, Councillor Kemp G and the trust. The William Price Charitable Trust, Councillor Peter Latham, and these appointments are all proposed until the County Council elections in May 25. And we have so if you're happy to consider those.
I'm happy to approve all of those appointments, and thank you for your help with these ones, Jackie.
Thank you. We have 3 further recommendations, 1.2, 1.3 and 1.4, if you're happy to approve those.
Yeah, happy to approve 1.2 and 1.3 as well. Thank you.
And I've put on there just to note about the representations for Weald. So we've got that audit trail.
And yeah, happy to note the Weald Trust as well. Yeah, the Weald Education Trust as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of my decision day. Thank you all for attending, and please can I ask that the webcast be stopped.